AITA for not wanting my strict parents near my daughter. I, F35, was raised by very strict, almost abusive parents. They'd yell at me for the smallest stuff, and sometimes even for stuff I didn't even do, simply cause they were angry. They didn't beat me, but just the yelling was enough to fuck up with my mental health. Their behavior really gave me a lot of problems. As I grew up, I felt the need to be the one to break this cycle of abuse. I promised myself that if I ever had children, I'd make sure to raise them differently, not wanting them to keep the cycle going. Years later, I had a daughter, F8. When she was born, I kept my promise. I raised her with the respect and care I wish I received from my parents, and thankfully my husband always supported me. I always made sure she felt safe to tell me anything. She's very polite and well behaved, and I can clearly see that it isn't out of fear, like it used to be with me. It makes me so happy and proud to see that I really managed to break the cycle. My husband works all day, so when my daughter isn't at school and I have somewhere to go, I leave her with my parents. Ever since she was born, I always made it clear that I didn't want them to treat her like they used to treat me. They seemed to understand and to be willing to change, so I decided to give them a chance. 3 days ago, my daughter spent the afternoon with them while I went to a medical appointment. When I came back to pick her up, what I saw made me flinch. My mom, F63, was yelling at her, for no reason at all. She was extremely quiet the whole time my mom yelled, like I used to do. I didn't say anything, just picked her up and left. When I entered the car with her, she started crying. I tried to comfort her before I started driving home and asked her what exactly happened. She said she loved her grandparents, but they'd often get angry and start being rude to her for no reason, even though she was always gentle with them. And to make it worse, I asked her why she had never told me about it, and she said my parents told her not to. They were basically doing to her exactly what they used to do to me. When we got home, I explained to my husband the whole situation, and he got just as angry as me. We decided to call my mom later, after I put my daughter to sleep. I asked her why she did exactly what I told her not to, and her answer was, again, exactly what she used to say to me. I just am like that. And then, the worst thing I ever heard her say, if I don't yell, she won't learn. That's just real life. So I made a decision. I said I didn't want her nor my dad near my daughter, at least until they started changing their behavior. She said I couldn't keep them from seeing her, but I said I was just trying to protect her from having her mental health fucked up by them like I had. Then I hung up. Part of me says I did the right thing, but I can't stop thinking that maybe I was too harsh. I was just trying to protect my daughter. AITA? Wow. Frankly ESH, because that was something you should have made damn sure of before ever leaving your daughter alone with them. You leave your young daughter with your abusive parents on a regular basis and don't even check in to make sure she's being treated well. It sounds like you buried your head in the sand, and this is a decision that should have been made a long time ago. I actually agree with this. Op did not protect her daughter, knew her parents were abusive and still left her child there. If it was as simple as please don't shout, why wouldn't they have stopped at her? Reality is now that they may have a wonderful case for grandparents' rights. And if it's court-ordered visitation, they really won't have to give a damn about what Op says they can and can't do. ESH. The parents for obvious reasons, and you for. I said I didn't want her nor my dad near my daughter, at least until they started changing their behavior. Why would you ever consider allowing your daughter to be in the same room as these people under any circumstances? How much more harm do you want to let them cause her? They aren't almost abusive, they are abusive, and the fact that they told her not to say anything to you means that they are knowingly abusive. NTA. They need to be out of her life. What are the grandparents' rights like where you live? I said I didn't want her nor my dad near my daughter, at least until they started changing their behavior. Said in a gentle tone, so you'll still let your parents see your daughter in the future if they show you they've changed? What's it going to take for you to realize your mum will never change? Your mum told you that's just who she is. In other words, she won't change. She didn't apologize or show remorse, and on top of that they got your daughter to lie to you. Your mum will just pretend to change and do it again. NTA for protecting your daughter, but you're a little naive for trusting that your parents had changed just because they told you they wouldn't yell. In 6 years, didn't it ever occur to you to ask your daughter how your parents treated her, especially since you knew they are abusive? Please don't waver and give your parents unsupervised access to your daughter, not even if your daughter asks for it. I grew up with a monster for a mum, so if I sound too judgmental, I don't mean to be. AITA for fixing my Mill's dress so she could wear it to Sill's wedding. I love my Mill. She can be kind of annoying and difficult, more in a socially awkward way, but I chose to let it go. Sill, my husband's brother's wife, is a bit more neurotic and controlling than me, and they clash. I find Sill very uptight, and try to avoid her, which doesn't really work because she can't stand when someone doesn't like her. Anyway, they got married recently, and Mill wore lilac, not white, freaking lilac, but Sill was upset because she thought it was too light. Mill and I were invited to get ready with the bridal party, and I heard Sill complaining about the dress being too light for the mother of the groom. I told her that if it was white I would be on her side, but Mill looked fine. Well, Sill accidentally spilled coffee all over the skirt. I don't believe her for a moment that it was accidental. She even smirked when she apologized. Leading up to the wedding, she had made comments about how Mill should dress more like her mom, who is probably 10 to 15 years older than Mill and at least 100 pounds heavier. I don't think Mill has to look frumpy just because she has adult sons. Sill had a spare dress, probably because the coffee was premeditated, and she seemed so proud of herself for trying to force Mill into a frumpy and very cheap-looking dress. Sill doesn't know this, but my mom was a seamstress and I worked for her all through high school. We had enough time before the wedding for me to run to a store and get supplies, so I took Mill in the bathroom, cut the damaged part of the dress, and fixed it. Sill was furious when we came out, so Mill ended up wearing the too light color, but now it was even shorter and probably too sexy for the mother of the groom in Sill's opinion. I didn't think anything of it, and we had a great night. Sill confronted me recently and said that was a bitchy thing to do. It put a damper on her night, and I should have supported her because she was the bride and lilac is some grievous sin. NTA, it's so nice to see a story with a nice Mill. Your Sill should count her blessings. We see enough stories of the Mill in actual white. Lilac is really okay. Isn't lilac kind of a classic mother of the bride/groom color? I feel like lilac and navy make up like 75% of mother of dresses. Sill is nuts. NTA, and as a costumer, I love a tale of gorilla seamstressing in the wild. Lilac is such a common mother of dress color. I'm impressed Sill threw such a fit. She sounds like either there's something else going on that she couldn't or wouldn't say outright, something she should have phrased differently, but the rest of the wedding party are in dark colors. She'll stick out in the pictures like a sore thumb. Or she channeled a front from something else to the mock dress. In any case, again, NTA, and well done. Go sewing skills! Exclamation mark. As a crafter who sews a lot, you are a hero who shows what a pair of scissors, pins, needle, and thread can do against the evils of bridezillas and spiteful people in general. NTA. Put lilac fabric next to white fabric and there's no way they can be confused. Obviously NTA. You helped someone who didn't do anything wrong and stuck it to the person who did, whether the coffee spill was intentional or not. Based on her behavior afterward points even more that it was planned. What you did was a nice thing and Sill can get over herself. The backup dress definitely makes me think that Sill planned this ahead. He probably heard about the Mills wearing white wedding dresses and friends with red wine coming to the rescue. AITA for refusing to visit my brother and his newborn because of what he did 2 years ago. I am 33, lost my wife 2 years ago. Right now I'm a single dad of my 9-year-old son. My wife had cancer. It was too much for her to take, but she always said that our son was her strength. She was receiving treatment and spending time at home with our son. She always said that she wanted to spend as much time at home with our son as possible. She just knew. Took care of our son's needs, as well as household. Her family was very supportive. Her sister helped by driving her to the hospital. But my family didn't do much. My brother, age 37, kept coming over and making comments about how our home was a mess and unhealthy for our son. Claimed that he was being neglected and asked what would happen to to him after my wife passed away. He bluntly said that it was unfair for our son to live like that, and kept being negative and telling those things to my wife, making her feel bad and worried. I told him to stop coming over and just leave us alone. I was angry with him. I went low contact, and 1 month before my wife passed away, I had a visit from the CPS. My wife was home when they came. They did an interview with me and my son. I explained my wife's condition and they talked to her sister and informed me that someone called them and filed a report about our situation and possible neglect in our house. Eventually nothing came out of the report. My wife never stopped crying. She got very sick that night, and I'm sure she felt helpless, as if she was a bad mother. I assured her that she was in fact stronger than most people and that the report was nothing, so she shouldn't have been worried. But she couldn't help it. My dad called me a week after, telling me to be careful. My brother reported me to CPS and was bragging about it, hoping they'd take action. I was livid. I got into a huge argument with him and all who defended him, and I cut contact with him right then. After my wife's funeral, no one visited except for her sister. I talked to my family, but I haven't talked to my brother for 2 years after what he did and all the stress he caused my wife. Last week my mom called me to tell me my brother and his wife had a baby boy and wanted me to bring my son and visit him. I refused. She called me unreasonable and told me to let my son meet his cousin and uncle, to just forgive and forget. She kept pressuring me despite saying I don't want to. My dad himself said it's time for us to reconcile and get together as a family. I ended up yelling at them that I won't forget the scene my brother made before my wife passed away, and claiming that we were bad parents, knowing that we were struggling and doing all we can. They just kept insisting I visit and see how it goes, but I still refused. My brother didn't apologize. I only talked to my parents. This is his first baby with his wife. They had issues with miscarriages in the past. NTA 1. He called CPS on you for no reason. 2. He put unnecessary stress on your wife in her final days. EFF him. He would be dead to me. After my wife's funeral, no one visited except for her sister. Okay, well then, your parents lost any credibility when it comes to family matters. NTA. Kind of hard to forgive people who haven't even apologized. Also, he didn't even call you himself to tell you he wanted you and your son to visit. He tagged your mom into it. You don't owe him any of your attention or time. NTA. He tried to have your son removed from you while your wife was dying and bragged about it. He'd be dead to me. The class act would be to help clean up the house. This was despicable. NTA.